at the Historical Society Museum, we have a collection of farm machines that are on display here outside. Each of the exhibits is numbered 1 through 16, and if you go sequentially through in that order, we approximate going through a season of raising something on the farm. There may be a few little exceptions in here, but basically we're starting with primary tillage, and at the other end we have a couple of machines that are used for harvest. And so we'll go through it kind of step by step. The first item is a simple iron pot that really isn't part of raising a crop, but it is used for heating water, mainly outside over a fire. Back in the old days, before people had plumbing indoors and had hot water available, a pot like this could be used for producing heated water for washing and doing laundry and that sort of thing. Also in the old days when people made their own soap, a big pot like that was useful for boiling up wood ash to the lye so you can make soap. So it's just kind of a catch-all tool that was used for household type things. Move on to item number 2 here. It is a small single-bottom plow. It was used, hauled by either one horse or a mule or an animal of that type. As you can see, the bottom is fairly small on it. There was a limit to how much you could accomplish with one animal, and this was about what you had to work with. You put the animal in front to pull it, and you had 2 handles out the back that the operator used to control it and keep it heading straight down the furrow. This is used to turn old soil or sod over bottom side up as the first step in tillage. As the first step, it was generally referred to as primary tillage. The next item we've got here is also a plow, but it's on a slightly larger scale. It still only has a single bottom, but it's larger than the first one that we had. This one is what's known as a sulky plow. You see it has a seat for the operator so that you can sit up there where you have a good view of what's going on, and an assortment of handles and adjustments and so on to control the depth and to keep the width that you're cutting under control. This would take several animals to pull. Probably 3 would have been about the minimum, but depending on soil conditions, it may have actually required more than that. But anyway, this is called a sulky plow, and that term is used on some other machines. As I said, this is called a sulky plow. Several other farm machines come along that also have a seat so that the operator rides on it, and the term sulky is used on many of those. So it is a term that will show up once in a while in things other than just a plow. Okay, here we have a slightly different primary tillage tool. This is what's known as a middle breaker, or more commonly a middle buster. This is used where you have row crops that were done with a raised hill where you had a very high ridge where the plants had been grown the previous year. You use this to go back through and break that ridge open to open it down to a flat section of ground again, so that becomes used to just plant the new crop. When crops are grown in that way, it's usually done in drier areas, and as the crop is cultivated during the year, that hill is raised higher and higher to get the roots of the plant deeper down into the soil. So this is typically a kind of dry land use type implement. It would be used as an alternative to the old board plows that we were looking at a minute ago. Generally, when you get done with primary tillage, there are some secondary tillage operations that are done. And what that means is that once you've broken the soil, you have to go back over it to break it up more finely, to chop it, or to smooth it. This implement is a peg tooth harrow, also sometimes called a spike tooth harrow. You can see there are small pegs attached here, and when it's operated, you can set how deep those turn down into the soil, and they're used to kind of hit the high spots and break up clumps while you're tilling. So that's the secondary tillage piece of equipment. What we have here is just one section, which would be adequate for working on a small scale. On a larger operation, some of these were made so that they could be ganged together as multiples to cover more ground. Okay, number 6 is something called a weeder mulcher, and it is used after a crop is planted, but while it is still very small. You can take this and run back across the soil, and those very fine teeth that are on it will break up hardened crust on the surface of the soil and take out some of the small weeds that have started to grow. Typically, you can run it straight over your crop that you've planted and not hurt the crop any. As you get a little further into the cultivation of a row crop, this cultivator is something that would be used behind a single horse or mule, and you walk behind to guide it. And you've got, in this case, 2 working tools to take out the weeds between the rows. Different versions of these may have had different numbers of teeth on it, may have had different styles of tools, but the concept is basically the same in any case. The next 2 items that we have here are a little bit off of the line of crop production. They are actually used to move soil around. The first one here, quite often their slang reference to it is to call it a tumble bug. This one is made to hitch behind a tractor, and it's used to scoop up soil to move it to a different location. Farmers would typically use things of this sort for either working on ditches to improve drainage, or filling low spots, smoothing up the lay of a piece of land so that they could use it more effectively. It also might have been used for digging ponds or something of that sort. This particular one was made by the Killefer Company, which was a California company, and it has subsequently been purchased by John Deere, so it's now part of the John Deere line. The next machine over here, same type machine, same usage as the one we just looked at, only this is a horse-drawn version. This one is one that typically is referred to as a Fresno, and it was named after the company and ultimately the town in California where they were designed and built. They were used a whole lot for ditching and preparing to drain fields to make them usable. If you have an opportunity to look in Lloyd Henderson's book talking about the area, there's a photograph of one of these in use. Okay. Step back just a little bit in the season. When you're planting a row crop, these 2 implements here, numbers 10 and 11, were both used for planting a row crop, such as corn or cotton. The first one here is a sulky type. It's got a seat on it and was designed to be used with 2 horses. And it had a type of a middle buster type blade on the front of it, and then it dropped the seat in behind. That combination typically was referred to as a lister. So this is a lister type planter. The other one, a little bit lighter duty piece of machinery, is one that you walk behind, would typically be pulled by a single horse or mule, and it would be used again to plant the same crops as the other one. Things would be planted in a row, such as corn, cotton, and so on. Number 12 here, this is a grain drill. This is different than the planters we just looked at in that this is used to plant something that is generally more of a broadcast type seeding, or seeded in the way this actually functions. It would plant very narrow rows close together. So you would use it for a small grain type crop, such as oats, wheat, barley, and so on. This one was late enough to have been designed for tractor use. It's got a tractor hitch on it, and there's a manual lever here for dropping the working tools into the ground. The way it is sitting here, we have it set up so that the right side, as you look at it, the machine is in the ground in the planting position. The left side is raised up to a transport position. So you can kind of see what the difference is between the two locations. You can almost, back behind it, see some chains that drag behind it. Those would drag behind to cover small grass seed that would be broadcast on the plant. So in certain circumstances, you would use drag chains to cover the crop. Here we're getting more into the harvesting side of things. This particular piece of machinery here is a horse-drawn mower. It's a 6-bar type mower. It's Theory number 6. And it would typically be pulled by 2 horses and is used to cut a hay crop. When you cut it, it would just fall straight on the ground, and then you come back later to the next step in that process usually is to rake it. And this machine here is what's called a dump rake. Again, it would usually be used with 2 horses. And as it goes across the field, those heavy hooks on the back are used to gather the hay as you draw it across. And then there's a control that the operator uses to lift those up periodically and dump everything that has been accumulated in one sort of a pile. If the operator is fairly careful on the approach they use, they can line up all of those points that they drop it so that the hay that is dropped that way ends up more or less in a row. That is a dump rake for gathering that sort of thing. We have one other harvesting machine here. This one is actually a corn binder, and this particular one was made by John Deere, and it was originally horse-drawn, but they shortened the tongue on the front of it so they can pull it with a tractor. What this does is it goes down the row of the crop, which, like I said, is generally corn, and it will cut each stalk off near the ground, and it will bundle them together. After it gets a bundle together, periodically it will tie a piece of twine around that bundle, and then it comes out onto this conveyor, and it will be dropped on the ground. So it takes the standing crop and puts it in bundles that can then be hauled in for further harvest. In the south, some of these were used for harvesting sugar cane as well. So that's an alternate purpose for the same machine. And right up here at the end, we have another iron pot, similar to the one that we had at the other end of the row. So that's just another example of one of those that we have here.